And astonishing goal. That's the way to do it. Herrera. Ibrahimovic! With 3.5 minutes to play. Now Di Maria wants it back, gets it back. Fantastic.
That's the luck of the bounce off Gaston Ramirez. Top try! What a day this is turning out to be for Manchester United.
Mason Greenwood hits the spot.
In he goes towards Muriel. What a save, David De Gea. Brilliant save.
Dan James. Dream debut. Daniel James.
Hello and welcome back to the United Devils podcast. This week we are looking to back-to-back wins for Manchester United. A 2-1 win in the FA Cup quarter-final away to Norwich, and a 3-0 emphatic victory in the Premier League at the Amex Stadium, and the first win for Manchester United away to Brighton in the Premier League. We will then be looking at contract situations and potential transfers, as well as United's next matches at home to Bournemouth and away to Villa in the next 7 days. And with me today, I welcome back Suraj. And of course, we're all still technically in lockdown, whether it is being lessened or not. But how are you nonetheless?
Hi, Arjun. Yeah, all good. Adjusting to the new normal. I can't tell you about the situation of COVID where I am because I stopped reading the news. So I'm just going to check the news again when it's time to go out.
Yes, yeah, I'm pretty sure I did the same, but in a depressive way, just stopped. I just couldn't bear to read what was being said. It's
exactly
one of those things. But there has been some good news, but it's more like a brighter side on the footballing side, as Manchester United remain 15 games unbeaten, 4 games into lockdown, and they have won 3 and drawn 1. The latest one, or the latest 2, in fact, we'll talk about the first. United obviously travelled in good form to Carrow Road for the FA Cup quarter-final after a 3-0 win at home to Sheffield United, courtesy of a Martial hat-trick. However, Solskjaer did make 8 changes to the side. Only 3 players from that team survived, which were Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire, and surprisingly Bruno Fernandes, who looked a little bit blunt against Sheffield United, and despite that still performed at a 7 out of 10 level, but did start at Norwich. And United had a few opportunities at the beginning, but nothing really clear cut. The best chance of the first half did come to Norwich, and it was a good shot, but was blocked valiantly by Harry Maguire. However, in the second half, United got off to an early start, and a deflected cross from Luke Shaw found Igalo, who hooked it in quite acrobatically, you'd have to say, to open the scoring and score his 5th goal in 4 starts for Manchester United, a 95-year-old record for the most goals scored in his first 4 starts. But then Norwich started to press, started to grow into the game because United were looking rather comfortable and barely threatened Tim Krul. And a long-range effort from Campbell beat Sergio Romero quite questionably, you'd have to say. And Norwich were level. However, a red card in the 89th minute after Solskjaer rang the changes. Martial, Rashford, Matic, Pogba, and I believe Brandon Williams all came on. And it changed the game, but obviously couldn't force the game into... couldn't force United into winning the game in normal time, despite the red card late on for Tim Klose. But United did win it in extra time, thanks to a poacher's finish from our captain, Harry Maguire. There are lots of things to talk about in that game. Obviously, the 2 goals from United, but also the defensive fragilities and maybe the lack of fitness of some of the players that came in. Obviously, 8 changes made to the Premier League side. Suraj, I'll ask you first. What did you think of the 8 players coming in? What did you think about their kind of overall play? I mean, obviously there were the likes of Lingard and Mata and Dalot who played worse, and the ones like Igalo and probably McTominay who did play a bit better.
I remember my first reaction as soon as I saw the team sheet was what? Because even though we have quality in that team, if you look at it, the quality is mainly in the defensive half of the side. If you look at our main front three, if you will, it's Lingard, Igalo, and Mata. So there isn't a lot of creativity in there. So even if Bruno Fernandes brings his A game, he still needs someone to pass around with and build the game, which we didn't have on that day. And the game was really boring and really drab in the beginning. So, yeah, I mean, I did expect that, but hey, we play 50 to 60 games a season, and you can't expect 50 to 60 uh, beautiful football games. Some games are going to be boring, and just getting a result is what makes a difference. And I don't care about people online saying, "Hey, but you needed 120 minutes to beat Norwich." We beat Norwich. That should be it. And you could see the difference as soon as substitutions were made. We looked like a completely different team. And once Bruno had people to pass around with, he knew that okay, now we can really build something. And that's when we did, because when he had Lingard and Mata, we just weren't creating anything. I think a couple of times Bruno was trying to break the line and make a run into their box, but the player was supposed to lob the ball into him, just turned around and played back to the defense, and you could see his frustration. So yeah, I think Solskjaer should have added maybe a Rashford or I won't say Martial, because Igalo did his job. So maybe Greenwood or Pogba maybe. But yeah, I can't be too mad at anyone, because at the end of the day, they got the job done. So mainly, I'm just happy about that.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I should have said Solskjaer did actually make 6 changes to the side. First manager in English football to have done that, and obviously Greenwood did also come on. I did forget, because Martial came on, I believe, the first few minutes of extra time as the 6th substitution. But yes, you're quite right. There were a lot of changes. A lot of those players didn't have a lot of match time. Obviously, Lingard hadn't featured since the Derby game in the FA Cup, so he had played very little football for United before the FA Cup quarter-final, so he was not very sharp. But you would have expected Mata to have been one of the players with more quality than often. He just got completely nullified by the fact of Jamal Lewis's runs forward, and he had to track back and couldn't do so, because obviously he's lacking the yard of pace that you mentioned actually at the beginning of the year, saying if Mata's still starting on the right, then that's a mistake. Obviously, there was one player I think I was expecting to start. I think maybe you were too, Daniel James, who obviously came off against Spurs after starting the game, but didn't start against Sheffield United, and we were expecting him to start. So what do you think was the logic of leaving him out altogether?
So I have actually given this a lot of thought as to why Daniel James hasn't been playing as much in the last one or two games. I think it's because in the first game after the lockdown against Spurs, James was horrible. He was so out of his depth. He didn't know what to do with the ball. As soon as he got the ball, he'd run into a defender or run off the pitch. So I think Solskjaer really was really mad at him about that, and just I think to teach him a lesson, not teach him a lesson, but just to show him that no one is undroppable, and then he really has to earn his chance back into the squad. He probably just benched him to prove a point. That's my logic. But again, it's anybody's guess.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I will come back to that. But before I do, I would just like to say that we are currently live with the Sheffield United-Tottenham match, and it is now 3-0 to Sheffield United. Ollie McBurney makes it 3, and Spurs are awful defensively, it would seem, and Son and Ndombele are weak to get there, and Baldock slips in Berger at the byline, and they clip it in for McBurney, who finishes at the near post, and Spurs have only registered 1 shot on target and none in the second half. So that is massive for their chances to revive their top 4 hopes. obviously, we'll talk about that now. Actually, I think we know what's happening with Daniel James. Obviously, he struggles against teams with low blocks, and it's better for him to come out when he can counter and use his pace. That's very true. But we'll talk about that Sheffield United game just now because it is happening in front of us. That's a massive one that's a massive blow for Spurs. What do you think is going through Jose Mourinho's head at this point, Suraj?
All right. So actually, in the Spurs game, there was this really tricky decision in the first half when it was 1-0, which could have changed the game, and VAR just completely messed it up. It should have been 1-0 for Spurs because Mora was falling over, and the Sheffield defender cleared it, and in the clearance it hit Mora's arm, and that was flagged as off handball, which I thought was really unfair because Mora had no control over where his arm was. So I think that completely changed the game. And to be fair, as much as I loved Mourinho's time at United, I do remember capitulations like this, where we just go on to completely lose the plot and capitulate against sides. I was expecting an upset from Sheffield because I think even Chris Wilder probably told them to up their game because they've been horrible from when the lockdown has begun. Lockdown been lifted, sorry. And I actually missed the third goal. I haven't seen the third goal. But yeah, in general, Spurs weren't creating a lot of chances, and whatever chances they were getting, Sheffield did really well to defend it, and that's something I really love about Sheffield. Their defensive discipline is really, really good. Their positioning and placement is really, they have it spot on, and so I think they're reaping the benefits of that against Spurs.
Yeah, I think so. I think their competence at the back has really kind of been their best quality at times in the season, and we've seen how they've managed to hold on to good results. I mean, they almost got some positive ones against City and Liverpool, who are, score happy really at times, and couldn't quite get past the 2-goal margin. And they've got good results against Arsenal and obviously now Spurs as well. I believe they drew at White Hart Lane as well, or the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium as it is now called, and I think they got a good result against Chelsea as well. But they will be happy with that, obviously, because that now takes them to 7th place, above Arsenal, and now Spurs go below their North London rivals. Of course, a North London derby is set to happen later down the road, but that is a massive blow for them, and they'll be really praying to that they can salvage this season, because no European football will be hugely detrimental to their the monetization for their summer window, as we've seen down the years. But that first goal, that potential first goal that was ruled out was very contentious. Obviously, it hit Lucas Leiva's arm. And by the letter of the law, apparently that means that it's not a goal, but he was being fouled, and so that is questionable. You'd feel really aggrieved if that went against you, but you'd also feel like if that was a goal, that technically, if you're being kind of a stickler for the rules, that is technically handball. So, do you see that as being poor lawmaking or poor refereeing?
I read this tweet saying just because you give a monkey the keys of a Ferrari doesn't mean, and he's not able to drive it, doesn't mean the Ferrari is bad. So
yeah, Pogba Senior, yeah.
yeah, exactly him. So I think in general the quality of the referees employed by the FA are quite low, because I might be wrong here, but I haven't really heard about a lot of VAR cases gone horribly wrong in the other leagues, like Serie A or La Liga. I haven't heard it. I've just heard it in the Premier League. So maybe, because at the end of the day, there's still one guy sitting behind a screen and making a decision. So you can't be questioning VAR. You've got to be questioning that ref.
Yeah.
So So yeah, I think in general the FA needs to take a look at the quality of referees they have.
Yeah, no, I do see that. I've been very critical of the referees at times, especially in the Anfield game where he was horrendously inconsistent. And I was also very critical of Mike Dean in the Derby game when he booked Fred for a dive that was never a dive, and VAR didn't overturn that either. Which I find, I think the level of refereeing has dropped in the country, and I think they need to sort themselves out, because honestly, at times I would feel sympathetic to a Sunday League six-a-side that get some of the referees in the Premier League at this point. But a bit more news. I've seen the third goal. It is awful defending, like really awful from Son and Ndombele, and really poor goalkeeping too, because it's near post, and he's literally like a foot away from the shot. But Spurs have actually scored, and Harry Kane has got a goal now. Had one disallowed before, but it is now allowed, and Spurs may not be back in this, but they do at least have a goal with 4 minutes to go. We will go on to some of the other results that have helped United's push for top four. Obviously, the Chelsea and Leicester games. We'll talk about that in a bit. But first, we've got to talk about the win they got to put pressure on those teams. And, of course, United went into the Brighton game knowing full well that they hadn't won there in the Premier League. I believe the last time they won away to Brighton was 1982 in an FA Cup win. And so they put the strength of the first team out: Bruno, Matic, Pogba, Martial, Rashford, Greenwood. Shaw still starting, hasn't actually missed a minute of Premier League football till that game since the defeat to Burnley. So he has been unbeaten all this time in the Premier League, which is something you are surprised about when it comes to Luke Shaw. But he was vital in the win against Brighton, because his runs down the channels with Rashford finding him were causing Brighton loads of problems. And an early goal from Greenwood opened the scoring when Brighton was starting to grow in the game, which was almost a relief. And then 15 minutes later, Fernandes scores a deflected one, hit the post earlier in the game, but got one now, and it was Pogba's 50th goal contribution in 105 Premier League games. And then when Brighton started to grow in the game in the second half, Bruno finished them off with one of the most devastating counterattacks United have actually played, full stop. From what I believe, stats indicate that this was quicker than that Arsenal one, which Park and Rooney and Ronaldo linked up fantastically, and Ronaldo finished. So I believe it was 11 seconds to get the ball from Maguire to Matic, to Greenwood, and then to Fernandes to finish the game off. What was your take on that game as a whole, Suraj, especially going into it?
To be fair, I wasn't very confident going into the game, because first of all, our record against Brighton isn't really good. Second, Brighton had 4 out of 6 points against Leicester and Arsenal, so that's really saying something. And also, we were 14 unbeaten, so I knew something had to go wrong. Everything can't go right for us. So I was mentally prepared for us to take a beating in this game. But wow, what a performance! I I love that game so much. I slept so peacefully that night. Especially the lineup came out, and I thought, oh, that's a perfect lineup, and that puts us in an even better position to fail spectacularly. But Brighton were nowhere in the first half. I think their only main attacks came later on in the second half when they got Trossard and Mopai on. But until then, they were nowhere to be seen. And we completely took advantage of that. Mason Greenwood is... I'm trying so hard not to get carried away.
Please get carried away.
Mason Van Persie, his maturity is on a different level completely. You just, when he's rushing into the box, the defender genuinely doesn't know if he's going to go to his left or his right, because he's just so good on both sides. And I think when I was just staring at Mason the entire game, you can just tell that he has his basics of football completely spot on. When he's getting completely pressed from all the sides by Brighton players, his first instinct is to at least retain the ball, even if it means to pass back. So he unlike say someone like Dan James, his first instinct isn't always to dart forward. He takes his time, he understands the game, he knows everyone's position, where everyone is, and accordingly he makes his next move. So that's something I really love about his game, and his assist for the third goal was extremely good. I don't remember the last time I've seen a cross coming in from that part of the pitch straight to our player. Yeah, so I mean, I'm still trying to think, but I can't think of any. And Bruno Fernandes, wow, I thought he wouldn't start, and I wanted him to to be on the bench and not start, but because he's played so many, and then he comes and scores a brace and wins his 7th man of the match in 8 games. Wow.
Yeah, it's scary how much of an impact he's had, obviously. If I'm not mistaken, he has the most goals and assists in the Premier League since his arrival. Only, I believe, Salah and Martial are behind him in second and third. I think Salah has 7 and Martial just has 6 straight up goals, which I think can't be understated. His goals have been crucial for United. I mean, 3 of them might have been in the Sheffield United game, but I mean, those 3 plus the one against Watford, Chelsea and Manchester City, I mean, he's been exceptional. And obviously him and Rashford didn't play as well as they may have done against Sheffield United. And before I go into Rashford, we can't understate how important Greenwood has been coming in. I mean, the 13 goals he's got this season have been crucial. Every single one of them has been important to our progression from the Carabao Cup to the FA Cup to the Europa League and to the Premier League. And he's been crucial, and this is his first full season, and you know the only way is up for him, really. And Rashford and Martial both on 19 goals for the season, but they did have their standards did drop against Brighton. Rashford may have been crucial in feeding Luke Shaw a few times, but there was barely any sign of Anthony Martial after his hat-trick against Sheffield United. Is that just something that we're going to see where sometimes he can't turn up but it won't matter because we have those players around him that will then shine?
That's actually one good thing that's happening in this team right now, is that we aren't dependent on one goal scorer. Earlier, if Martial or Rashford didn't turn up, it was pretty much a draw or a loss for us. But now we have different outlets for goals. We have Bruno, we have Greenwood, we have Pogba providing from midfield. So it's okay if they have an off day here and there. Rashford's form is a little concerning, and I think the only reason he isn't getting criticized as much as he would otherwise is because we have other sources of goals, and his opportunities that he's missing are not costing us the game. So I wouldn't say he's on thin ice, because he was in red hot form before he got injured. So it's okay. Players do have their slump. I'm not losing my patience with him, because like I said, we have other outlets for goals, and that's a really good thing that's happening with the squad right now. We aren't depending on one player.
Yeah, absolutely. That is 100% true. I think the fact is that we've now that we've actually got quality, now we've got depth, we can actually, rely on other players. There were points during the season when Martial was injured and Pogba wasn't there and Bruno hadn't been signed yet, that it was basically down to Martial and James or Rashford and James at times to get United through. And you can't have that. You can't just be relying on 2 players. We're not, no disrespect. Southampton rely on Danny Ings' goals. Brighton have been relying on Mopé's goals. I mean, it's one of those. Arsenal have been relying on Aubameyang's goals. But yeah, it's like that. We have more quality than before for the last few years, really. which is something special and something that can't be underrated, really. So I think that's a massive boost forwards, and long may it continue. Before we go on to United's next match, which should be a cracking game, I hope, we'll go on to some of the things that have happened over the week. Obviously, there have been other Premier League matches, and there has been the FA Cup draw, and I'll start with that. United obviously aren't the only team into the FA Cup semi-final. Chelsea beat Leicester 1-0. Manchester City overcame Newcastle and booked their place in the semi-final for the second season in a row. And Arsenal managed to win late on against Sheffield United through Dani Ceballos, and have booked another semi-final in the FA Cup, something they have won 13 times, and United looking to equalise that with an FA Cup win this year. United now play Chelsea for the fourth time this season. I mean, we've played City 4 times. We might as well play Chelsea as well. And Arsenal will then play Manchester City in the other semi-final. Firstly, I think we were all a little bit worried with Chelsea being resurgent and handing Liverpool the title. But then after this West Ham game, where they were so defensively fragile and just ruined on the counter with the strength and the pace and the cleverness of the West Ham midfielders and Antonio as well up front, they do look fragile. Do you fancy United's chances against Chelsea now? And if so, who do you think they'll be playing the FA Cup final against? Is that even a question?
No, that's not a question. It's going to be City in the final. And against Chelsea, I really wouldn't take their game against City as a huge factor, because I think we don't talk about the fact that City have lost 8 games this season, and that's the same amount as United.
That's the same as United, isn't it?
Yeah. And exactly, that's shocking. And so City have been really bad, and they're second only because rest of the Premier League teams have been equally bad or worse. That's literally the only reason they're second. So City aren't that great, and so obviously that means we can't glorify Chelsea's performance against City, even though they were really good that day and Pulisic played really well. Anyway, so about the semi-final, I'm only concerned about the fact that Frank Lampard won't let us win for a 4th time against his team. He'll probably, a man's got an ego. So yeah, I don't think he'll let us beat him for the 4th time. But there's only so much that he can do. Chelsea's defense is quite shaky, and Kepa is, I think, one of the worst top 6 keepers I've ever seen. Rudiger's been really shaky. Christensen's been shaky as well. Chelsea fans can't stand Alonso. So yeah, I think we have a really good opportunity to go to the finals. So, and I think we have a decent amount of a gap between our last Premier League game and the semi-final. So I really hope we can beat them, because of a trophy in Solskjaer's first full season will be a huge boost. And then we go on to play the Europa League. So just crossing my fingers, if we get 2 trophies and a top 4 spot, I think that's a really good season for United.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think 2 trophies, top 4, maybe even 3rd place. But yes, they do have that chance to beat Chelsea, who have shown they are susceptible on the counter, and they still have errors in their team. And like you said, the goalkeeper's been questionable throughout. I think maybe Caballero will play, because he did play against Leicester. I do expect him to play against United again. And obviously we know what happened last time, Rashford's sensational free kick. And hopefully history can repeat itself and United can get another win and maybe get a bit of revenge in the FA Cup from that really awful defeat in 2018. Honestly, I was sickened by it at the time. Phil Jones giving away that penalty, blimey. But yes, United do have that chance, and you think it's City. And then how do you see that that final going? Then do you see United doing a quadruple over City too?
Just just to redirect a little bit, when Hazard's running at your goal, Phil Jones is literally the last defender I want defending that.
Yes.
And that's what we
Maybe
had in
Mustafi's
our
up.
finals.
Maybe Mustafi. That is a close.
I could make a case for Mustafi.
Yes.
Yeah, again, it's going to be really tough. If we do reach the finals, it's going to be really tough beating City, because Pep Guardiola is a manager who knows to win, and the humiliation he's had to suffer this season with giving. Oh, I think they've probably already given the Guard of Honor to Liverpool by now at the time of recording, or it's in 5 minutes, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be pretty embarrassing for him. And the reason they're giving Liverpool the Guard of Honor is because he failed to beat Chelsea. So he'll really want this FA Cup, and I think he's even mentioned that that an FA Cup will be a great boost to then go on and compete in the Champions League. So Ole and the boys will have a really tough task. And if you look at City, they're just firing on all cylinders. If you saw the quarter-final game against Newcastle, that was crazy. The scoreline barely showed what happened in the game. They never left the Newcastle half, and they have some excellent squad depth as well. Mara's been playing some excellent football. De Bruyne, obviously, arguably or inarguably Player of the Year, Premier League Player of the Year. So, yeah, but then again, Ole has pulled rabbit out of the hat, beating Jose and Pep in the same week. So I really can't tell what's going to happen in the final. I'm going to be optimistic and say we're going to win it if we do reach the final.
You will be on the edge of our seats, and potentially not in a good way. We'll have to see. As for that point, actually, Manchester City are giving the Guard of Honor now. They all look really quite disheartened to do so, from what it seems. But yes, United could make another Derby Day, a cup final in that sense, and it will be a cracker if they can get through and challenge Manchester City, because I do expect them to get through Arsenal, regardless of Arsenal's good form in FA Cup semi-finals and finals for themselves. But we'll move on to there's two contracts I'd like to talk about. Angel Gomes, who has refused to sign a contract for Manchester United, and the club has confirmed he has left, and reports indicating that Paul Pogba will be signing a new contract where he will be earning he'll be earning £350,000 a week, up from his £250,000 a week, and will be earning close to, if not the same, as David De Gea. Obviously, this time last year, Pogba was in, I believe, Thailand, saying he wanted to make a change in his career. While that is a vague statement, his agent said otherwise and was very blunt with it all, saying, yeah, he's going to leave and we want him to leave. And there were reports that Real Madrid offered 35 million plus James Rodriguez in the summer, which was downright outrageous. And so Pogba stayed and then became injured, and then the reports kept looming again when he kept coming back and then getting injured. And now he's back. He's playing with Bruno. They're playing great football. They seem to link up exceptionally. Obviously linked up for the goal. What do you think about the current situation with... Let's start with Paul Pogba, because why not? Everyone else does. Let's start with him. What do you think about the current situation? Do you think he is a lot happier now? And do you think that he will sign this deal that is reported?
Yeah, well, the only thing that you can go by is statements and the news. I really don't know what's going on in Paul's head right now, but all the sources say that he's really excited to be playing alongside Bruno Fernandes, and so I'm just really happy that if this news is true, I'm really happy, because if you look at the Brighton game and I think the game before that, the Sheffield one, Paul Pogba, I think in both games combined, he lost the ball 3 or 4 times, and I remember each time he ran back and won the same ball back, and that's the kind of commitment I like in a midfielder playing in his position. Earlier, with his attitude being questioned, I don't think he would have made that effort, because we've seen clips of him jogging and then United going and conceding. But I think that's not the case anymore. He's really putting in the effort. He's being the first line of attack, as in when De Gea passes the ball to one of the centre backs, he's right in front of Maguire or Lindelof saying, "Hey, I'm right here," and when we attack on the other end, he's always at the edge of the box, looking and trying to create opportunities. So while we do applaud Bruno Fernandes's work ethic, I think we should look at Pogba as well. He's done a really good job since he's been back, and I hope he signs the contract. And 350k is nothing. Arsenal pay Ozil 350k to sit with an umbrella in the stand. Just pay Pogba 350. He's worth it.
Yes, I totally agree with that, especially when you think if Sanchez does end up signing permanently for Inter Milan, that's a massive wage off our books, and maybe the likes of Lingard and Rojo, who are both earning 100 plus thousand a week, as well as Phil Jones as well. There are a series of players and Deadwood that are earning lots of money that could be that could be just out of the way and make way for that money to go to Pogba, who honestly, if he can keep up this form, this tempo, this composure, and his fitness, most importantly, it will be more than well deserved. So that's what we can say for Pogba. But on the other hand, there is someone who has refused to sign a deal, Angel Gomes, and has left the club. Obviously, he'd been there since he was 7, I believe. He made his debut under Mourinho in 2017, aged 16, and is the youngest player to have featured for Manchester United in the Premier League history. What do you think about his situation? Because obviously he hasn't played a lot this season, and when he has, it's been rather underwhelming. Obviously, he had scored 1 goal in the pre-season, which was fantastic against Spurs, and we were all quite excited to see whether he would play, given the fact that we didn't have a proper number 10. Lingard, Mata and Pereira, the options, and none had been performing exceptionally to keep them in the team. And so we were thinking maybe start Gomes and see what he can do. But obviously there was something going on in the background, perhaps his lack of strength. I mean, he's only 5'3", and he clearly seemed to struggle. What do you think about this whole situation?
It is strange. I didn't expect him to have contract issues, and I thought he was pretty happy at United. Again, I'm not. It doesn't really bother me too much that he's leaving, because he's had his chances and he was really average. And I think Solskjaer is the manager you need if you want to break through at United. And if he couldn't do that under Solskjaer, then he should be looking elsewhere. What I'm surprised about is that he has left the club without actually having another solid offer on the table. Yeah, I think he's a free agent right now, and it's quite a risky thing to do, given that he's still really unproven. Anyway, like I said, it doesn't bother me too much, because the deal with, say, the difference between the Pogba situation and the Gomes situation is that Pogba changes our team massively, and if we do sell him, we'll have to again go through the headache of going into the market for a midfielder, and it has to be a big name signing, because you can't replace Pogba with anyone, and so on. Yeah. And the way Solskjaer is building a side, we don't want big names leaving. We want big names coming in. Mm-hmm. But we don't have that issue with Gomes. He's easily replaceable, and we have plenty of good options in our academy. So yeah, I mean, all the best to him.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But you don't see it being, well, another Paul Pogba situation where he comes back for a large sum 5 or 6 years later.
That's tough to predict. But like you said, I think his height does hinder him a bit. So he he isn't even really well built like Adama. So he can get bullied. But one thing that could work in his favor is that he's really flexible. He's a trequartista. He can play anywhere in the front four. So that's probably something he could use to his advantage. But at the moment, I think he should have at least waited for another club to come in before.
Yeah, absolutely. There were obviously reports of Chelsea looking for his services, but I don't see how he would get into a Chelsea team that already has Barkley, Mount, Loftus-Cheek, Kovacic, Jorginho, Kante, and Gilmore, as well as now signing Ziyech as well, who is a number 10. And so I don't see how that would work, but maybe he'll go somewhere else.
With Pogba, Juventus almost immediately came in with the bid and said, "Hey, we want this guy," but there's no one coming in for him, so it's okay.
It would be sensational if he does then sign a contract with United after leaving and realizing he has nowhere else to go.
Yeah, that'll be pretty embarrassing.
Could you see that happening?
I think it is possible. Can't rule that out either. But you have to imagine how that talk would go down.
Yeah, well, I think he'd be definitely getting a cut wage to the one that was originally offered.
Definitely.
But yes, in the meantime, the league still continues, and Manchester United, while they have made significant ground in the race for top four, are still fifth, and obviously they were helped massively by Chelsea and Leicester at the weekend, who both lost their games. We won't have time to go into them all in detail, but we'll basically just say the fact is that United are now starting to capitalise on other people, or they're winning their games and then looking to the others to say, well, it's your turn now, and then they're now stuttering, which is something we haven't seen recently, where it's normally been for the last few years, where United will either win and then everyone else will win, or they will lose and everyone else will win, and so they either lose ground or don't gain any anyway. So just quickly, do you think that's something, a change in mentality, or just about fortune?
No, definitely there is a change in mentality. I think there are mainly two parts to the whole mentality thing. One is capitalizing on opportunities when your opponents drop points, and the second part is overtaking them when the time comes. So I think we've proven the first part, that yes, we can grab opportunities when they do fall to us. Now we just need to see if we can overtake them. So that remains to be seen.
Absolutely. Hopefully, I mean, obviously Chelsea have a slightly easier game, you'd have to say, at home to Watford. But they can cause problems. Obviously, the defensive fragilities in Watford on the counter have proved to be devastating at times, especially against, unfortunately, against Manchester United, but more fortunately against Liverpool. But Leicester still have Crystal Palace, who are out of form just as much as they are, really. And that could prove an interesting game, because whoever wins that match could galvanise the rest of their season. And it, honestly, I think it could go either way. But for United, they host Bournemouth in an Old Trafford game. Obviously, the last time United played Bournemouth, it was a pretty woeful game. United missed about 4 or 5 chances early on in the first half, and then late on, Josh King produced an individual bit of brilliance, bit of poor defending from Wan-Bissaka, who got sucked into the centre, and Josh King scored. And then from that point, Bournemouth shut up shop, and United's lack of Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba was never more exposed, and couldn't actually get that equaliser or any goal for that matter. And so United did lose that game. Obviously, since that point, Bournemouth's fortunes have changed substantially. They are in the relegation zone. They have I mean, they were absolutely swatted away by Newcastle last match day. How do you see this game going? Do you see it being devastating, or do you see Bournemouth holding on for a long time and being actually quite a tough game for United?
I don't know. I just want us to get the job done. I think we can beat them pretty easily because they have 1 point out of a possible 15 in their last
Wow.
in the last 5 games. Yeah, they've just drawn one and then they've gone on a 4-game losing spree. And if they do manage to take points off us, that's going to be extremely embarrassing. Can't allow that. But yeah, exactly like you said, we now have Bruno and Pogba. We can start approaching games with a lot more confidence. And I think if we use Matic intelligently, then our midfield is one of the best at the moment because Matic has been incredible. So this has to be one of those games that you just finish off in the first half, best players, and then move on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, on that point, we did say Rashford hasn't been playing his best. Obviously, hasn't scored since, if I'm not mistaken, the 4-0 win against Norwich in January. Do you see United getting a big result? What's your prediction for the game? And also, do you see them naming an unchanged team from the side that beat Brighton?
Yeah, I do hope it's an unchanged team because I think they've got a good three days rest, and all the, well, I would say important players got subbed off pretty early. So yeah, it has to be a good convincing win, but I mean, I know I did earlier say that just get the job done, but well, I'm used to higher standards after we beat Brighton.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Anyway, so yeah, I'd say a 3-0 win should be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really hope Pogba scores in this one.
Yes, I do too. I mean, it'd be his 25th goal in English football. In the Premier League, actually, I should be more specific. In the Premier League, it would be his 25th goal and 51st goal contribution in, I believe, 106 games in the Premier League, which is fantastic for a central midfielder. Yes, I agree. I do expect an unchanged side from the side that beat Bournemouth. Maybe swapping out Luke Shaw, who's played a lot of football, but honestly, I think that probably less is more when it comes to changes at the beginning, and then maybe if United are 2 or 3-0 up at halftime, which I can easily see them being, I can see that United win quite comfortably, and then they can make the changes kind of about an hour in or something like that, and then rest, because the Villa game away, they're going to be fighting for their lives, and I think it's going to be a far more difficult match. So I do see this game being at least 3-0, but honestly, I'd be expecting 4 or 5 based on Bournemouth's defensive record, and hopefully United can get revenge with some clinical play. So I have very high expectations for United for this game. But against Villa, I think it will be a much tougher. Obviously, Villa Park has been troubling for Manchester United. The last 3 times they've played at Villa Park, they have won 1, drawn 1, and I believe lost 1. So how do you expect United to do this time? Do you think the fact that Villa, even with a back 5, have conceded the most amount of goals in the Premier League shows that they are no longer the side that can be even close to thinking of safety?
Well, one thing we do have to consider is that Villa's next few fixtures are Liverpool away, Man United at home, Palace at home, and Everton away. So I think just looking at that, they might be down in terms of morale because at the situation they're currently in, they need the easier fixtures to be coming their way, and I think Liverpool are going to give them a nice beating before they come to United. So I hope they've accepted their fate before they come to before we travel there, more like, and it's just a matter of just an obligatory game more than anything.
Yeah.
But like you said, Villa Park has been tough, and I mean, footballers aren't people who just give up, right? They're going to fight till the end until it's mathematically impossible. So, yeah, I do expect a tough fight from them, and much tougher than Bournemouth for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Would you make changes to the side? I mean, obviously, let's assume or let's predict that our predictions are correct, and United do win 3 or 4-0 against Bournemouth. Would you make changes against Villa, or especially with Chelsea on the horizon in the semi-final, or would you stick to the same team?
uh, that's a good question. I don't think I would make any substitutions because we play Bournemouth on the 4th of July, and then we have a 5-day gap before we play Aston Villa
Mm-hmm.
on the 9th of July. So that's, I think, a good enough time to recuperate. Where the rotation will be necessary will be once we start playing Southampton and then Palace, because the games come faster then. So I think for the Bournemouth and Aston Villa game, we can pretty much have the same lineup.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I was talking about Aston Villa. We might as well say there have been more reports of transfer dealings, and Tim Sherwood, the former Villa manager, has claimed very adamantly that he thinks the Jack Grealish deal was the personal terms were agreed in February, it would seem, and that the deal is pretty much over the line. It's just about announcing it when if or when Villa are relegated or safe. Firstly, I think we already know Jack Grealish's quality. I mean, in this side, he's got 7 goals and 6 assists. Who knows what he could do when he's actually got proper players alongside him, really, or competent defenders and better attackers. But do you think that maybe 50 or 60 million for Jack Grealish is worth it, or do you think that's just how money works in this day and age?
Well, 50 seems okay, but I think if Villa go down, we can negotiate with them even more, and then Woodward will use his pandemic excuses. Like, I don't know if it is true, but the whole 50 million pound for Sancho.
Yeah.
People, I think someone has come out and said that's actually not true, but I wouldn't put it past Woodward. Grealish, the thing with Grealish is he'll have to accept that he won't walk into a squad. He'll have to fight Bruno and Pogba for the midfield spots, and well, not Pogba so much because Pogba plays further deeper. Yeah, but anyway, he definitely doesn't walk into a squad. So if he's okay playing a rotation-based system wherein he plays the European games or a few midweek Premier League games, then I'd gladly have him. But I think that shouldn't be our first priority. First priority should be getting Jadon Sancho done, then signing a top quality defensive mid, because Matic is really good, but I don't think he has the legs in him to start week in, week out, and midweek. So
yeah,
McTominay is great, but he's still young, right?
It's not the same, is it?
Yeah, no. There's a difference. Matic brings his experience, and he just makes everything look so effortless. So, if we could get a CDM before Grealish, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to be fair, for my opinion, just based on watching him the last few matches he's played, one player I'd definitely look at is West Ham's Declan Rice, especially if they go down, because he looks wasted in that team at points this season, and he looks like a real quality player, and looks a bit like the kind of Michael Carrick-esque player we do need to balance out Fernandes and Pogba in the long term. Obviously, Matic is 31, but on that Grealish point, yes, I completely agree. I think he's probably going to be more likely to be a squad player, but offers a lot more quality. I think the fact is that Mata is nearing the end. Lingard should be gone. Pereira, when he came on, was very, very average, I think, is the kindest way I can describe it, but definitely not good enough for Manchester United, I think. And I think he's 23, 24, and not really shown any kind of any kind of cap above what he's currently at, and so I think that's him done. Lingard, obviously, his form's fallen down a cliff, and he just needs to be out of the spotlight, really. I think that's the most important thing for him. But yes, I do think I think Sancho has to be the priority. I agree with you, and yeah, I agree. The £50 million, I think that's just a way for them to say we've we've basically said that if it's 50, we've said £50 million. So if we don't get him, it's not our fault. That's all we can afford, in inverted commas. And if they do get him, then it's sensational, and they've done some amazing bit of business, and they've managed against all the odds to find the money available for him or something like that. Which I just find is really quite pathetic, because everyone knows we have the money for him. But anyway, moving on. We will. So what do you think about? I went off on a bit of a tangent, but what do you think about Declan Rice as that option as a midfielder?
Okay, you can probably help me out here, but what's the difference between McTominay and Declan Rice? Because when I look at them, I just see the same player.
Yeah, I do see that point. What I do see from Rice is that he's much more happy to sort of sit back, and he can control the play a lot more for me. The McTominay is a great ball-winning midfielder. I think he plays the same role as Fred, and while that did work at points during the season, it was easily at times it was easily overcomable, because there wasn't that player that could soak up possession, intercept the ball. He does read the game very well, I think, Declan Rice, a lot like how Matic does, a lot how Carrick does. And while the forward passing is very similar to McTominay, I think the actual defensive side is far better, and I do think that he has the edge on him. But I do see your point. Maybe then United will see whether McTominay can actually find that role, maybe look at Matic and try and replicate that, and obviously Carrick as the coach will obviously help them all. But hopefully that could happen, because then it'd be so much easier if we could use the player that we already have and don't have to spend another penny on. But if needs be, we would have to look at someone maybe like Thomas Partey's been linked, and DD, Ruben Neves has been linked for the last few years. But I do see your point. Hopefully McTominay could grow into that, so he wouldn't have to spend more money. But honestly, at this point, I think Rice does have that ability.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Like when McTominay is kind of an amalgamation between Matic and Herrera.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas Rice has a little less of the Herrera in him and more of the Matic. Yeah, his game, whenever I've seen him, he does look a little mature, and I think he's learning from Noble. So, yeah, probably I think, I don't know, I haven't really have an opinion on Rice yet. I mean, he's a great player, but probably,
probably a bit more time, sort of. Hopefully he'll have another season in the Premier League, and maybe then United could go for him, but we'll have to see. I'm afraid this is all we have time for this week. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Suraj for joining me. It's been a pleasure as always, mate.
Always a pleasure, yeah.
And as we're recording, the Liverpool game versus Manchester City is still live, 0-0, but Salah has hit the post, and City have had a couple of offside goals, but nothing to report as of now. But after that point, if you have any questions or any topics you would like for us to cover, then please comment below on the YouTube video or the Twitter or Facebook post. And if you enjoyed this, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on Twitter for all of our content.